more and more every day, language is becoming a hot topic, whether it be the way it's used in the spiritual and manifesting communities or used politically. But if we really want to create the revolution that any of us want, I really think it's about time we get back to using words to mean what we say rather than trying to get words to mean what we want. First of all, welcome to another video. I'm Annie, your Silicon Valley stage sister, here to bring spiritual consciousness to the forefront of your daily life to make life a little kinder and simpler. So just today, the term cisgender was a hot topic in my social media feed, as well as the idea of using words the way we do in the spiritual community to do things like speech detoxes and trying to word things in a way in which doesn't manifest more of what we don't want. And I thought it was interesting because today I said something exactly how I meant it. And not only did I do that, but for me personally, I was saying what was also forward momentum moving in a manifesting way for me as well. And yet it didn't come across that way to the person I was talking to because I used the word not. Now, to be fair, there are times where I create sentences that are furthest from grammatically correct. I think I learned that from Alanis Morissette originally. But there are times where I will, in sort of a comedic way, arrange words to mean what I'm trying to say just to get the words out. But more and more every day, especially politically, we find ourselves having this sort of push to have words mean something that they don't or didn't already mean. And this sort of twisting of reality is partly what the spiritual community gets wrong when it comes to things like speech detoxes. Because when it comes to something like a speech detox or using words in a certain way to make sure we're not manifesting more of what we don't want, the point is not to hyper focus on the words. I talk about this in my speech detox and mindset detox videos that I have on Patreon. What a speech detox is meant for in spirituality and manifesting is to alleviate upset in your life. So if you're creating more stress in your life by trying to hyper focus on your words so you're not manifesting more of what you don't want, you're actually doing the opposite of what it's intended for. And I find this very interesting, the way this is playing out politically as well, because there's so much twisting of language when it comes to trying to give words new definitions. Now, this brings me to the topic of labels. And just the other day, I was saying to someone that, you know, as much as I don't relate to labels, words are important. And the fact that words mean something, that they have a definition, is important to us as humans. But this whole political agenda to get people to associate themselves with labels more and more every day is silly. And it creates more stress, and it creates less spiritual levels of consciousness. And I think that's part of the, whether it's intentional or not, spiritual warfare that's happening in the political arena. Because the more we fixate on the superficial things like labels, like even in numerology, giving things like your name an association with a number, and then having that mean something, is, as we say as Rosicrucians, superstition. And superstition is not something that we want to follow as people with spiritual levels of consciousness. It actually lowers our vibration rather than raises it. And so I find it very interesting that there are even things like cisgender, where we have what's supposed to be just the antonym to transgender, but what it really does is separates us more and more rather than bringing us together. And that is what spiritual levels of consciousness is really at its peak when it comes to living by the universal laws. That's the opposite of what we want to do. We're not wanting to create more separation. We are wanting to create more unity. And so using a term like cisgender, even if not derogatory, like, why can't we just be human beings? Why do we have to label every little thing? And I appreciate language. And I appreciate the fact that words have definitions. And it is very disruptive to go from having a word meaning something for time immemorial in a way in which reflects the empirical evidence. I'm not going to say scientific anymore. I'm going to say empirical, because we all know nobody respects science anymore. But empirical evidence that comes from the scientific method, the things that we can do as experiments over and over again and get the same results, that's important. And so when we start having words reflect things that we cannot all, through scientific method, prove, no matter who does the experiment, when we start getting away from that and start trying to have words mean more and more subjective things rather than objective things, we start to take away from the oneness. And so this is why we want to be removing labels as people with spiritual levels of consciousness. And sure, we do need language to communicate as human beings, which is why I like to remind people, we are not what we do. You can describe what you do with words, but, you know, as they say in the Tao, the Tao itself is nameless, is wordless. You cannot with words describe the true Tao. If it is something you can describe in words, it is not the Tao, the way. So yes, we absolutely need words, and they are important. But we need to stop trying to label ourselves when it comes to who we are, and just find ourselves gently using words to describe what we do. And the more we can do this, the more we can create the oneness that is the revolutionary goal that we're trying to achieve. So the last thing I want to say is that when it comes to spiritual levels of consciousness and things like speech detoxes and things like making sure we are wording things in a way that doesn't manifest more of what we don't want. You know, I made this comment about myself using the word back, and how I was talking about back to things, which we can't get back to things even if we want to. And recognizing that I have that in my subconscious is something to look at, but not if it creates more stress. The point of all that is to create less stress, and the point is to create a place in your mind where you can get to a place of neutrality to start from, so that you're starting from zero before you move outwards. That's the point of much of what we do when it comes to spiritual practices, is being able to get ourselves to that place of neutral mind that allows us to start whatever it is we're starting, whether it be starting or starting over, from this neutral mind, so that we can make conscious and mindful decisions. And the more we do things like try to nitpick ourselves into boxes and more labels, the less we are doing to really move forward this spiritual revolution, that this spiritual awakening that's happening all over the globe is meant to be doing. Is those at the highest levels of spiritual consciousness, their revolution starts with oneness. So that, if we want to get to that, starts with making sure that our practices are helping us get to that neutral mind. Not stay in the neutral mind, but get to the neutral mind from whatever place of upset we are at. Or even excitement. You know, sometimes we can get too excited in a joyful way. And that's an amazing thing, to experience excitement and joy. But there are times where in a moment of excitement and joy, we can also make the wrong decisions. So being able to get back to that neutral mind allows us to get back to the levels of consciousness and mindfulness that will really help us get back to the oneness that the universal law of one holds in God, source, spirit, cosmic consciousness, the absolute, whatever you want to call it, holds as a point to aim towards as we work to these spiritual levels of consciousness. And I don't know about you, but I know that we can all benefit from doing better. So let's start stepping away from the labels, and let's certainly start stepping away from trying to get words to fit what we mean, and instead make sure that we're using words to mean what we say. Because changing the definitions of things does not help us come to the oneness that will allow us to live at the spiritual levels of consciousness we are working towards as a collective. It certainly won't help us harmoniously live as a collective. If we want to do that, we have to have things that we can all come to some common ground with, and that used to be, at a minimum, understanding the definition of a word. Because sure, there are times where language evolves, but that's not what's happening here. The language isn't naturally evolving. It's being forced into people are trying to force their ideals into the definitions of our words. That's not helpful for anyone. Like I said, whether it's intentional or not, it is a form of spiritual warfare that we are going to have to battle, pushing back against all of the things that try to get us to artificially and superficially fit ourselves into these boxes when we're trying to expand beyond, expand into the beyond, expand ourselves into the gap between the particles, not fit ourselves more and more tightly into these little pieces. These little pieces. It's certainly not what is most healthy, and that's something we can measure. It's a metric I use all the time. You can see when someone is physically healthy, and you can see when someone is emotionally healthy. It's something that's actually quite measurable, whether people want to believe it or not. So be kind to yourself. There's a reason why I made the motto, or what I say at the end of every Sanctuary of the Awakened video: stay safe, stay sane, be brave, and be kind to each other. We need to be kind to ourselves too. And when we try to use words to do anything other than describe what we do, we cause ourselves more harm, more stress. And that's not what spiritual levels of consciousness are about. So if you're looking to reach the spiritual levels of consciousness, which I'm not saying I know what any given spiritual person looks like, but I know what spiritual levels of consciousness looks like. And that is working towards the oneness that is what we all are, the universe looking back on itself. But we should also remember that if it is nameable, it is not the Tao. Alright guys, thank you for joining me for another video. It's time for me to get to bed. Before we go, first of all, I want to ask you, how are you all doing? I want to know. Let me know. Did you have a good day? Did you have a bad day? Did you have an awkward day like I did? I was very awkward today. But I'm grateful for having this experience of awkwardness today, because it showed me how I'm rusty in ways that I don't want to be rusty if I want to achieve my goals. And I am grateful for the people who embraced me in my awkwardness today. Because we here in the Balanced Blackwood tribe, we have big dreams and goals. And if you, and that's not just me, that's many of us here in the Balanced Blackwood tribe. And I am grateful to be the hub for all of these amazing creative people. And I want to be the hub for more amazing and creative people, not just so that they can connect with me, but so we can connect with each other. And that's going to require resources and all sorts of things. So if you want an inexpensive, not just inexpensive, but technically free when it comes to money, way to contribute with reciprocity to the universal law of abundance today, go like, subscribe, comment on your favorite YouTube people's videos. It's a very your time is your greatest resource, but at the same time it is an inexpensive way to contribute to those that you appreciate. Because I just realized the other day that I wasn't subscribed to somebody that I watched the videos of, and was shocked that I hadn't done that yet, because usually I'm mindful of it. But there's a reason why everybody who makes YouTube videos regularly reminds people to like, subscribe, and comment, because those things, you doing those things, very much help out those who are creating the YouTube content and videos that you like to consume. So I'm going to say that every once in a while. I'm not going to get back to saying it all the time, but I'm going to get back to reminding you guys, because if I can do that to somebody that I really like, I know I'm not the only one forgetting to do these things. And of course, please and thank you If you have already subscribed, liked, or commented on any of my videos, I am grateful and I appreciate all of you in advance. Thank you in advance for all of you who do so now. Also, all of the things, all of the links to all of the things in the description. If you're enjoying my videos here, I am mostly on Instagram. I am on all the other things too. Check out the links in the description. And as always, may the energies you serve you well. Let's keep making our way through. And I'll see you in the next one.